Hello and welcome to the Service-Based Business Society podcast. I am your host, Tiffany-Ann. On our weekly episodes, we will dig into everything you need to know about scaling your service-based business without losing sleep. With my experience in creating over 7 figures per month and a passion for marketing, finance, and automation, this show will provide tangible tips and techniques for scaling your business. Let's get started. Welcome back, guys, to another episode. Super excited that we are back with season 2 of the podcast. I must say the podcast journey has been something I didn't know I would love as much as I do. And it's really been an opportunity to connect with some incredible people, both as guests and as listeners. And it's really become this part of my business that I just absolutely treasure. So thank you so much for being here and tuning back in for season 2. We have some incredible guests lined up this season, and really my own business is going through some shifts and, dare I say the word pivot. I know that, through COVID, there was such a misuse or an overuse of the word pivot. So it honestly makes me giggle a little bit just using it. But we're talking some big changes, and I just love the energy and the vibe. And so I thought I would start off season 2 with a tell-all episode, because as much as we have really, spoken to some incredible entrepreneurs about their journey and their stories and whatnot over the past episodes, I haven't really shared my own journey. And, the kind of solo episodes have really focused more on business pieces and whatnot. And so while this will still definitely be business relevant, I also wanted to take the time to share a little bit about my own story, in more than just little snips and pieces, and really talk about, how my business is supporting service-based entrepreneurs and how that has become. So, you've heard me obviously talk many times about being a mom, and there is this piece where, I'm sure we've all heard, there's this meme that has gone around on Facebook since the beginning of time about raising kids like you don't have a job and working in a job like you have no kids. And that always resonated with me so much when I was in corporate. And I have worked really hard to try and break what almost was kind of conditioned or created as a just typical. It's interesting. Many years ago, between high school and going to university, I was a nanny. And so I had several different families in my time being a nanny. But I remember one of my first larger families, they had 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, just like I have now. And the kids at this time, I was surprised. I was, in my very late teens, and the kids had a bowl of vitamins that they had with their breakfast. And in that time, I remember being shocked that this was totally normal at their house. And, they had their breakfast and they had this little bowl of vitamins. And it really highlighted to me in that moment that normal is whatever your normal is. And, I was recently at a conference, and there was this discussion about how, there is what your normal is, and then there is what someone else's normal is. And, the example that was given was, there is the people who climb Mount Everest. And so, you go out, and this might be a lifelong ambition to climb Mount Everest. And so, you plan and train and pack and do all of these things so that you can go up to the top of the mountain and take the picture. But there's also the people, the guides, that go up there, and they're with these people and whatnot. And so the joke was really that picture at the top where they are potentially holding the camera. That's another Tuesday for them. That's their job. But if you were at the top of the mountain and the guide said, "Oh my gosh, we made it. We actually made it." You would be a little concerned, and so it's the comfort in knowing that someone else has been where you are, can do what you do, or these different pieces. Trailblazing the unknown can be uncomfortable, but it really is whatever your normal is. So people who trailblaze often and kind of, beat to their own drum or follow their own vision or do those, whatever that truly means for you, if that is your normal, that's very different than the person who is very black and white, very habitual. Taking that step and doing something different is often, a bigger shift. It's not every other day. It's not, every Tuesday. That can be a big shift. And so for me, leaving my previous role was that big shift. I spent my entire adult life really working towards a goal of climbing the corporate ladder. And I did that very successfully, only really to realize once I got to the top of the ladder that I really didn't want to be there. And that was a big shift for me, and really battled for a long time internally with knowing that I no longer wanted the same thing, but ultimately not really knowing how to make that shift, how to make that change, feeling a little bit, like, well, this is what I committed to. And so, if I really reflect back, though, that isn't what I always wanted. So I grew up riding horses extremely competitively. That was my whole life. I wanted to make the Canadian team. The term eat, sleep, breathe horses was my life. I didn't want to go to university. I didn't want to do any of those things. I wanted to ride horses. My eggs were all very much in that basket. And so when I was in a very serious car accident when I was 18, a lot of things changed. And it didn't all change in that moment. I don't think I really fully understood. As a kid, really, I was in my late teens, but kid mentality of living at home with few responsibilities, I didn't really realize how much it would affect my life really forever. And so, I kept trying to follow my goals and whatnot, because again, it was really that same feeling that I had in corporate where, I've committed to this. This is my life. I didn't know life any other way. And it wasn't until basically I came to the realization that anytime I sat on a horse, my legs went completely numb. And I tried to ride like that for a while, actually, but I became more and more frustrated with myself that I couldn't ride. I couldn't do the job that I knew that I could do previously. So it became frustrating. And ultimately, I decided to quit nannying and go back to school. And that was a big shift. So, up until that point, I had been a nanny to multiple families. So, childcare provider. I was live out. I did not live in the home. I was a live out childcare provider nanny. And so I would, ride and childcare. But when I wanted to go back to school, that obviously didn't work because school was during the day. And so, I looked at the schedule, and I often, people who go back to school doing night school or whatever, the experience that I had was that it was really hard to even get the classes that I needed to finish my degree, never mind try to only do them at night. I remember being in class with people who were working full time during the day, and, I would, of course, do some night classes. I did Saturday classes. It was so hard to get into classes that I just took whatever I could get into in order to finish my degree, because people were, like, oh, I'm just doing this part-time. And I thought, this is 4 years if you go full-time. And to go part-time, that just really felt like the never, never plan. And not to say that that isn't the right thing for certain people. I know for myself, I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel doing that part-time. So I left being a nanny. I said goodbye to the kids, which was to date, that was, at that time in my life was a really big thing. I absolutely love and adore those kids, all of them. And so I knew at that point I wanted to be a mom in the future. I didn't know what or when, but I knew that that was going to be a part of my life. And so I decided that in order to make my schedule work, I was going to be a server in a restaurant. And so that was going to be my nighttime plan. But what I didn't factor in was that basically everything was, you need experience. It was like experience required, experience required. And I tried and tried and tried and could not get a job. This was like a frustrating piece because it's like, here's my schedule and I really need to make this work. And so in the end, I delivered pizza for a little while. And, that was pre, fuel. I know gas prices across North America right now are really high. So this was, years and years ago. So I delivered pizza for a while, but I kept applying for those server jobs. And in the end, I will never forget it. I got a job interview finally for a job, and it was about 45 minutes from my house. And so I walk in, and at this point, I'm just so excited to finally get this interview. And I remember meeting with this person. I don't even really remember seeing the place during the interview. I was just so excited to finally get the interview. And so it was a Friday, and she said, "Have you ever been here?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Are you from here?" Like referring to the area because it was a different town than I lived in. And I said, "No." And she said, "Okay, you start tonight." And so I started that night, Friday at 10 p.m. I'd never carried a tray. I'd never gotten any kind of training. I had zero experience. And I just thought, okay. But the part that, I didn't necessarily, I was really shy. I mean, really, really shy. I am an introvert by nature. And I would say as I have grown and become more comfortable just in who I am in my authentic journey and whatnot, that often people mistake me as an extrovert. And so I heard a term recently, the ambivert, who is an introvert who seems more like an extrovert. But I wasn't necessarily the person who was going to march up to a group of strangers and start chatting to them. This was definitely not in my comfort zone at this point. But I knew that if I practiced it at work, that this could really help change my ability to do so. Because when you have a job to do, you can do just about anything. When it's just part of your job. And the part that really, was interesting to me is that I didn't know anybody. There wasn't any, pre-context. There was no, oh, I went to high school with so-and-so, or, that person was from this club or that. I didn't know anyone. And so I really went in with a clear outlook. And I must say that I learned so much in working at what I would now call the dive bar. At that point, I made some good income to cover my, going back to school, and the hours worked. And I also met some incredible people at that time and learned how to walk up to people that I didn't know and talk to them. And in the end, I worked there until the place closed down. They did a big, huge renovation and whatnot. And in that time, I had already found another job working much closer to home and whatnot. But I would say that, that time that I spent there really changed my outlook and my ability to do certain things. Last year, I got on a plane and headed to meet someone that I had been working with online for many months, but got on a plane and off we went to share a weekend together working on a project. And also then added a second stop to my and went to work with one of my clients and did kind of a intensive weekend. And in that moment, that day really hit for me that, hey, this kind of felt like starting at the restaurant all over again, where don't know what's really in store, but I got on the plane and went and, I remember knocking on the hotel room door or, the other person I met picking me up at the airport and kind of having that same moment of like, oh my goodness, I don't really know what I'm doing here. But it worked out. So it was an incredible trip, absolutely incredible. And so it's being willing to show up and do things completely outside of your comfort zone and really try to continue flexing that. As much as I am habitual and whatnot, I really have tried to, since working at that dive bar, have tried to continue not to be restricted by an unwillingness to change, grow, and be uncomfortable. When I made the decision to leave my previous role, and I often refer to it as my time in corporate, but the part of that journey that is more than just my time in corporate is that when I started at that company, it was a very small organization. I think there was, maybe there was less than 10 people, probably 6 or 7. The office was really in what, was really more like a closet. And, over the decade that I spent there, that business grew and saw all sorts of growth and change and opportunity. And by the time that I made the decision to leave, I had become a partner there. I had, hired, upwards of 50 people. We had scaled to 7 figures a month. We had implemented some massive system changes and done some very cool trend setting, industry changing moves. And so really, as much as I wanted change, leaving that life was really as big a change as leaving, the decision to ride horses competitively and go back to school. It really was that same big shift all over again. And, I reflect back and I often joke I haven't seen my comfort zone since then. And I haven't. I have really connected with some incredible people. And I think that would be the most surprising part of my journey, is that I always joked that I don't really like the humans. I like the computers more than the humans. And I think that the difference is now is that I've really, connected with my own humans, and I know that may sound funny, but it's connecting with like-minded people who, laugh with you, not at you, who embrace your differences, who admire your strengths. And, I have met in the last, 18 months or so, I have met people that I will remain close with for the rest of my life. And so as much as the entrepreneurship journey, people refer to as lonely, I would say, it's also not as lonely, because I was in a group of a lot of people when I was in my corporate role, but I felt very alone. I referred to it, as the old boys club. I will never forget sitting at this boardroom table with 3 very, very talented, very respected, upper executives, 2 CEOs, 1 vice president. And it was really, it was this moment because I still am not super chatty. And I know that sounds funny as I'm sitting here chatting away on a podcast, but I am I listen, but I don't enjoy being put on the spot. That's something that if you remember episode from season 1 about the little black book that changed my life, again, being put on the spot, I would say that embracing things like that has come with entrepreneurship. But back as I was sitting at this boardroom table, that was not something. And I also, don't necessarily in a room with so many very powerful, charismatic personalities. They're all, very passionately talking. I at that moment really struggled to interject in a way that I could add value to the conversation. And so I often felt like I was really, watching versus participating, because I didn't necessarily know how to find my own voice and say what I thought. You have people who are so talented. And if I still have such a huge deal of respect for all 3 of the people who are sitting at that table. And I think that is the difference, is the people I've connected with on the podcast and whatnot, who I would consider more like-minded, aren't necessarily, not driven by ego. Those kind of conversations are very different. I feel I can contribute more. I can bring more value. I can offer more in a different environment. So I would say that has been a significant shift. And that feeling of being alone, being with a lot of people, but being alone, it's easy to feel like it's just you in that moment. But sometimes it's really just that change of environment. It's the change of scenery. It's, the power of proximity and putting the people who inspire you, the people who make you feel good surrounding you. It's entrepreneurship does not have to be lonely. It can definitely be lonely, but you have to find the people that you're sharing that journey with, the people that are on that journey with you. It's the people online who like your posts. It's the people you connect with in the DMs. It's the people you join Facebook communities with, or that you interview on podcasts. I just finished yesterday interviewing someone for an upcoming episode. I am so excited to release this episode. Truly so excited. And when we were finished, I connected with her and said, "Hey, like I really want to, I want to do more of this with you." Just hearing her story, hearing her value, hearing all of these things, I knew right away this was something more that I wanted. And I actually, she and I chatted about it, super excited. We've decided I am gonna do some work with her, and we're gonna share some of what we were working on in a live. So stay tuned for the details on that. But it's finding the people that make you feel empowered, that make you feel heard, and that you can bring that value. One of the different pieces that our agency offers is business mentorship. So our agency works with people in 3 ways. We do business mentorship programs, which are the operations meetings, the task management, all of these different pieces, the guiding. One of my clients recently referred to it as the caddy. So if he is the golfer, the business mentorship is the caddy piece. It's knowing which club to play with. It's knowing the weather. It's, the suggestions and whatnot. And I had to laugh a little bit because at first as a non-golfer, I didn't completely understand, so people often say that golf is a solo sport, but, he explained that is not accurate, that, the caddy plays such a big role. And he said that the transformation, that having that guiding light. So, we do weekly meetings, 90-minute meetings, and help, facilitate the transformation and progress in his business. And so, we work with people on this mentorship piece, but we also offer done for you services, things like social media management, bookkeeping is a big one, digital marketing, website design, systems and process automation. So those are the services where, less about the guiding and more about us just diving in and offering that result. And then we offer, a full service package, which truly is a combination of the two, where we are 100% a part of your business. Our team is your team, and we are, helping the growth and progress, whether that is through the bookkeeping. A common process or progression for our clients is, starting with getting the books cleaned up. A lot of times bookkeeping falls behind or incorrect. And as a business starts to scale, people run into these needs for additional data, or, they want to dive into project profitability or these types of things. And then, there's this realization that the bookkeeping is not what it needed to be. And so, often we start with, hey, let's dive in and get this bookkeeping sorted out. Let's set up an annual budget. Let's look at laying out some objectives, key results, these types of things. And so from there, it is solving, the challenges that they come up. If, we implement something called the data-driven method. Once we've sorted out the bookkeeping or sorted out the business metrics, highlights, okay, so we have an SEO issue, we have a business visibility issue, then our team can, be deployed to solve that SEO issue or solve the business visibility issue. So, these are the different ways that you can work with our team. But the mentorship piece and connecting with like-minded entrepreneurs has truly been the most incredibly rewarding part of becoming an entrepreneur. And that shift into really an authentic journey. At the beginning, it's interesting because people would say, you need to be your authentic self. And I thought at that moment, I am being my authentic self. And, I heard over and over again at the beginning, no, like who you are with your friends. And I said, this is who I am with my friends. And, no, like who you would be at home. And this is who I would be at home. I think, though, that at that moment, that truly was the accurate, actual answer. That was who I was at home. That was who I was, because my work really had consumed me, and I had become conditioned to be this very vanilla person. And if I think back through that progression and through the process, I joked about 4 months into my business that, even if I was vanilla, I wanted to be like the fancy vanilla. When you get the vanilla and it has like little bean flakes in it. that I was vanilla, but I was like the premium vanilla with the flakes. And when I started my business, my branding colors were black, beige, gray, and white, totally neutral palette. And if you compare that now in contrast to our agency branding has beautiful bright orange, which is so, people still to this day are shocked that our branding has this vibrant color. And, that is the progression from, beige to orange. And as much as I was being authentically myself, there was a shift and there was a growth and almost an embracing of this new entrepreneur energy where this is the authentic person has changed. And I think as much as, when I was riding, I felt like I was all in on that was, I didn't know how to make that shift. And then I was in corporate and I didn't know how to make that shift. I was all in on climbing the corporate ladder. And now I didn't know how to not be all in on being this just plain vanilla. Because if I reflect back, I might have transformed into the more premium vanilla with the flakes. But when I started, it was very plain vanilla. And that was my authentic. That wasn't me not being authentic. That was who I had become. And so, if I can reflect back on even the previous year of the podcast and my business, so much growth and transformation and change has occurred. And I just appreciate so much everyone for being a part of that journey, so much growth and progression. And I am here to enjoy the journey, embrace being uncomfortable, because I have truly found that life is incredible when you embrace being uncomfortable. Well, we are all out of time for today. If you guys have not joined the Service-Based Business Society Facebook community, make sure you head on over to Facebook and we can continue the conversation. Be sure to also follow the show by going to any podcast app and searching Service-Based Business Society. Click subscribe, click the 5th star, and leave us a written review. Have a great week, and we will see you soon.